What's going on, y'all? Let's Be Real podcast, episode 5, man. Look, we got a lot to get into today. Again, probably just gonna be one podcast this week. For those of y'all who don't know, we just had our baby, so any chance, any little bit of time I can get, that's what I got for the week, and that's what I'm doing the podcast. So, um, one episode this week, man, but we will eventually get back to the 2 episodes a week. And with that, we're gonna stick with just kind of the most important stuff right now, and that's football season. And so, sticking with week 4, we're going to go over the games from week 4, as well as go ahead and give a look ahead for some of the games on week 5, as well as, like I said, we do every week, our underrated watch of the week. But look, even with a smaller schedule, even with a tighter schedule, we always going to start with the wine, man. I know last week we didn't have it, but we back. So I got my wine here this week. This is actually the Famille Bourgrier Classique Vouvray. And so look, this probably right now, as far as it's still we got a little warm weather out. And so nice little white wine, man. We'll get to the reds as we get into the winter probably and it gets a little bit chillier. But look, really great white wine, man. It's become one of my favorites. I actually may have already shown this on the podcast, but man, 8.5, 9 out of 10, I would rank this. But it's definitely sweeter. It's but it's dry and crisp. You'll get a lot of like nectarine, a lot of peach, and some honey flavor with it. But it's a Chenin Blanc, so definitely recommend it. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite wines right now. But with that, man, look, we're gonna hop into it, man. We got week 4, a lot of good games, a lot of good games. And we're gonna hop in with my squad, man. We're gonna go into the Eagles because we're gonna spend some time on this. And so look, Eagles Bucks, Eagles get the win 31-25. But again, look, it's another ugly win, another win where, you know, I would argue we probably should have lost the game. Um and it's look, each week you can point to something, right? Dallas, you have CD who drops a ball that looks like would put them in position to go and get a win. Week 2, you got the Chiefs. Ball bounces off of, Travis Kelce, arguably the greatest tight end all time, bounces off his hands. He's walking in the end zone. That goes back for a touchdown. Week 3, you get the Rams, and they got a chip shot field goal for a win, and you get the field goal block and return for the touchdown. And then look, this week you're up and in control going into halftime. And in the second half, Baker and the Bucks come out ready to play, and the Eagles didn't. Man, Eagles offense looked terrible. And where I say we escaped with this one is, look, there's going to be missed calls, but Quinyon got away with 3 egregious and blatant holding or pass interference, however you want to call them. One of them being on the interception in the end zone that Baker threw. And so, again, you get the win. You're happy with the win, but it's just another week where you can look at one play, or in this case, 3 plays, all of which were in the fourth quarter, that kind of just go to Eagles' way with either, I guess like I mentioned before, those different situations, or in this case, just 3 obvious no calls that should have been called. And so, look, what I'll say is this, because I still feel this way with the Eagles because I don't know if they've got enough kind of pedigree banked for me yet. But what I will say is, while it does remind me of 2 years ago where they're getting these wins, it's looking ugly, and they end up flopping at the end of the season. This does remind me a lot of the Chiefs last year, and what I will say is I give the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt because I think as long as you find ways to win, it's fine. But there is some distinct things as far as from the Chiefs' point of view, whereas one, Chiefs, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, going for 3 straight. You got a little bit more. You got to be a little bit more stock banked up than the Eagles do with the one Super Bowl. Granted, you got the one Super Bowl. You've shown you can win. So I I I'm not as, I don't feel as uncomfortable as I did 2 years ago. But the things that make me uncomfortable with this year is a couple things. First being the way we're winning, obviously, but also when you look at our ranks among, you know, in or our ranks in the NFL, right? Currently ranked 30th in yards per game and 22nd in opponent yards per game, meaning we are third from last in getting yards, and we are a bottom half of the league team in giving up yards. Now, scoring, we're top 10, I believe. Opponent scoring, we're also top 10. So, I mean, making plays when it counts. However, you are not going to be able to win in the playoffs if you are a almost last in the league gaining yards and one of the 10 worst teams in the league at giving up yards, because better teams are not going to let you, they're not going to make the mistakes, and they're not going to not capitalize when they get in the red zone that enough. And so that really worries me. The next thing that really worries me is the offensive play calling. Again, when I compare this to the Chiefs of last year, one thing I could always hang my hat on is you have Patrick Mahomes and you have Andy Reid. Andy Reid, one of the best play callers, one of the best coaches of all time. When you look at the Eagles this year, man, it's not just that our offense isn't producing yards, it's that the offense itself is just almost elementary level. It's either Saquon handoff, check down, or deep shot. You know, there was a stat that was going around a couple weeks ago prior to that second half of the Rams game, prior to the Rams game, really, but it even kind of goes into the first half. But something along the lines of, 60% of Jalen's throws were behind the line of scrimmage, and he only had like 2 throws between 5 yards and 20 yards. So to me, what that says is and now I don't agree with this. I think Jalen has shown the ability that he is I'm not going to say he's an elite passer, but he is a more than capable passer, especially in those intermediate routes. However, they're calling a game plan like they do not trust the quarterback. Like they do not trust Jalen Hurts to make throws. And so that to me is an issue. And then you couple this with the fact of just some of the things that we've seen this year as far as when you look at the Bucks game. I get you want to kill clock, but that turned into a game. To have 0 completions, 0 pass completions in the second half that should be impossible. It should be impossible in an NFL game to go an entire half without completing a single pass. And so you can always go, oh well, one-time thing. It's a one-off. You look at the Rams first half, -18 passing yards in the first half. Again, should be an impossibility, but you're putting those two halves are within the last 4 halves. So you get essentially 4 out of the last 8 quarters, you have played football negatively in the passing game. Again, it should be an impossibility. That is a huge worry going forward. Another thing that really worries me about this team is they are ranked 3rd from the bottom, or the 3rd worst in the league at 3-and-out percentage. Meaning, so their 3-and-out percentage right now is 34.1%. That means over a third of our possessions, we are going 3-and-out. To give you kind of an idea of what company that puts us around. Worst is the Vikings, who have a rookie quarterback and then an injured rookie quarterback, which is now they have a backup quarterback. The Bengals, their quarterback went out. They've been dealing with a backup quarterback. Eagles, the most talented team in the league. Titans, rookie quarterback, not very many weapons. Saints are starting Spencer Rattler. So we are sandwiched in between arguably some of the worst offenses in the league or teams that are dealing with major injuries at their quarterback position. Again, that is just unacceptable. And it's something where, look, it's a total team effort, but the passing especially is a big problem with this. Obviously, you're not getting that same production you did from Saquon. And then I think when you're pairing the lack of production that you got from last year to this year with Saquon to the type of offense being called where, you're at a 3rd and 5 and you're checking it down, you're asking, your back, whoever, to go and make a play, or you're going for a bomb, which, hopefully Devontae, AJ can come down with. But again, hoping that you can come down with a bomb on 3rd and 5 is not the type of offense that you'll typically see be legitimate championship contenders. And I'm not saying the Eagles aren't contenders here because, again, with that much talent on the team, I think even with this, we've seen it with this terrible offense, they're 4-0 against, what I would say is 3 legitimate contenders. But that then leads us to what I think is going to be the real big issue. And look, again, you got the win against Tampa Bay. It's great. Didn't look great. And again, I thought this was a game that the Eagles should have gone out and absolutely dominated, which it looked like they were doing in that first half. Again, you had Mike Evans out. They did end up getting one of their offensive linemen back, but means they were still down, I think, 3 other offensive linemen, a couple key defensive players. They did get Godwin back. He looked like it was his first game in over a year, but good to see him back out there. And so, but again, what this leads me to, and what I think is going to be the biggest issue here, is I truly believe, even if they're winning, if the offense continues the way it's going, I believe you're going to see a trade request come from AJ Brown. And look, I was talking about this today with one of my boys, and again, whether the Eagles do it or not, we'll see. I'd be shocked because just the cap hit to get rid of AJ Brown is incredible. But it's going to come down to how uncomfortable is AJ going to make it in there? Because look, I get everyone. If it does come out, AJ is going to look selfish, and it's because it's like, oh, you guys are 6-0, and you're requesting a trade. That's selfish. Blah blah blah. And I get that. Everybody wants, all fans want, they want the players to be, oh, I'm all about winning. I'm team first. I'm all about winning. When in reality, man, look, if there's going to be a position where I can understand you saying, man, I don't care about winning. And look, AJ told us himself he does not care about winning. Last year after the Super Bowl, he came out and said, yeah, I thought winning the Super Bowl would make me feel a lot better. But instead, he's like, what makes me happy is essentially dominating and demoralizing a cornerback. He's not getting that right now. Look, and we had the book last year in the playoffs. Now we've already got tweets coming from AJ Brown with, the hidden messages in it and everything, quoting scripture. So again, to me, this just feels like an AJ Brown trade. And again, when I come back to it, saying just from a standpoint of an athlete, I get it as a wide receiver, because you can look at a guy like, look at a guy like Julian Edelman, right? All the winning in the world, as much winning as a wide receiver can do, but mediocre to low end stats. I would argue he's not a Hall of Famer. If even the staunchest Julian Edelman fans, it's like maybe he's a fringe Hall of Famer. Compare that to a guy like, let's see, Julio Jones, or this guy does have a Super Bowl, and so it's actually a good comparison. Compare that to Mike Evans. Mike Evans, even without his Super Bowl, is going to be first ballot, no doubt, Hall of Famer. And it's because with wide receivers, it's not about if you won, it's about what did your stats look like? How many catches, how many yards, how many touchdowns? And A.J. Brown is a guy where, look, not everybody who plays in the NFL has the talent to be a Hall of Famer. A.J. Brown has the talent to be a Hall of Famer. And right now, with what his career is looking like, and if the Eagles keep this way, I would argue he's probably, I would take if it was on a bet, yes or no, I'd probably take the no side. And I would say the no side is probably favored right now. So, again, I get it from a standpoint of, we all want our guys on our teams to just care about winning and not care about their stats. But when you're a guy who's got that kind of talent and Hall of Fame level talent, to be essentially, just in case we might get you a couple targets here and there in the fourth, I can understand his frustration, and I would understand him requesting a trade. Now, again, that's going to move into how uncomfortable does he want to make it? How loud does he want to be about it? Whether it gets done or not. I think it would have to get just terrible for the Eagles to actually make that move. But we've seen wide receivers make it terrible. And look, man, so we're going to move on to another contender here, and what I would like to call a fraudulent contender. Rams and Colts, man. So look, Rams go out, win this game. Matt Stafford, great game, game-winning drive. And look, the Colts. I said, I think it was last week. I said I wouldn't say that it's going to be this week that the Colts, essentially show us that they're fraudulent. And this game is a game they absolutely could have won. You have I think Mitchell is his name. Mitchell drops that touchdown, trying to move the ball from one hand to the other as he crosses the end zone. And that's the difference in the game. But what I will say, man, is, again, I find it very hard to believe in a team led by Daniel Jones, and I've seen so much Daniel Jones and just mediocre play. Again, maybe, you know what, we're going to talk about another quarterback right up next that I had the same kind of doubts about coming into this year. But Daniel Jones, again, I've never seen the talent where I've seen the guy we're going to talk about. But I think what I will say is I think even with this loss, they probably are gaining more momentum as far as people thinking they're a legitimate team. And look, they are a legitimate team. I think over the last few years, all they've really been missing is a quarterback. I just don't believe they've got that quarterback yet. And then from the other side, man, look, Rams, like I said, Stafford looks good. And what I'll say, man, is they are, I believe they are primed to make a Super Bowl push. Look, they were one of the teams that I was kind of trying to decide between when I was like, okay, if the Eagles don't get back, which I don't think this was my thinking prior to the season. I didn't think the Eagles were going to get back. And so I'm going Tampa Bay or the Bucks right now, man, or Tampa Bay or the Rams. And right now the Rams, I would say I would pull them ahead, man. That defense is looking great. Stafford's looking really good. And look, that receiver duo of, Puka alone, man, is just Puka is on a short list of guys who you could make a legitimate argument for as the best receiver in the league. I would still say it's Justin Jefferson. And with Puka, it obviously helps that Matt Stafford's throwing the ball to you and not Carson Wentz. But, man, between Puka doing what he's been doing and Devontae is just, look, great complementary piece, and he's been playing well this year. Kyron Williams and that defense, couple that with Sean McVay, and, man, I think they would probably, again, I still don't know if I trust the Eagles. I would say they're right now, the Eagles are probably still the best team in the NFC just because they are winning and it is against great competition. But I would almost favor the Rams being the team that makes it to the Super Bowl right now, just because I don't think there's too many weaknesses on that team. And like I told you, we're going to go from a quarterback who, had some rough times with Daniel Jones, and we're going to move to the Seahawks, man, because the Seahawks, they beat the Cardinals 23-20. And Sam Darnold, man, look, I was very low on the Seahawks coming into this year just because I did not think Sam Darnold, after leaving Kevin O'Connell, was going to have – I don't think it was going to look the same as it did last year. I thought it was going to look very much more so what it did earlier in his career, and I was wrong. Because, look, Sam Darnold right now, look, he still can, see what the rest of the season holds for him. But right now, man, he is building off of last year. And I know everyone's going to point at the last couple games for him, but I think I had mentioned it at the time last year is when I looked at Sam Darnold and how he played in that playoff game and how he played against the Lions on that last game of the year, which was essentially a playoff game, to me it was, while he's been in the league, 5 years, whatever, 6 years it is, however long it's been, first playoff experience. And Kevin O'Connell's also not a guy who's shown a ton of playoff experience and playoff success yet. I think Sam Darnold coming into that environment, essentially you got to almost look at him like a rookie, because he's a playoff rookie. And so dealing with that, I think, we'll obviously see how he bounces back from that if the Seahawks make the playoffs, which right now it looks like they will, because that defense is looking great. But look, Sam Darnold, he did this against a Cardinals defense that is one of the best defenses in the league right now. And he made plays, made big-time throws. And so, yeah, I think the question now becomes, are the Seahawks a legitimate contender? I would almost put them – I can't put them on a contender status, but I think when you have that defense, they have solid weapons on offense, and Sam Darnold playing like he's playing, I think they become almost like a spoiler contender where I don't know if I wouldn't bet on them to make the Super Bowl or even make like the conference championship, but I would bet on them to knock off a team that is a contender, like the Eagles or the Rams or the Bucks. I could see them knocking one of them off. And look, we're going to go from a team that's, contender-ish status on the rise to one that's on the fall, man. And look, the Chargers, a team that started off looking like they were going to run away with the AFC West, is now looking like they're in a little bit of trouble. You lose another offensive lineman in Alt. We'll see how long he's down. And look, Justin Herbert, I know a lot of people calling him Peyton Manning 2.0. He's not looking like it right now. This season is not quite adding up to what Peyton's, year 5 or whatever it was when he popped. Justin Herbert's had a rough last couple games. Now you can attribute that to the offensive line, but look, I'll go back to, I've seen guys with bad offensive lines when they're, now again, when you're comparing him to a guy like Peyton Manning, or you're saying he's like he is going to be this elite quarterback, I have to judge him on an elite scale. And I've seen elite quarterbacks with bad offensive lines win a lot of games and have good offenses. And right now, Herbert is trending in the wrong direction after a couple of good games. And so, you lose to the Giants, man, who haven't exactly bathed themselves in great and in glory yet. I do think their defense will be good eventually, but look, that's a defense that has, teams have put up points against them. And so for me, if you want, again, for me to believe in the Chargers and believe that they're not going to be the same old Chargers, I can't see losses like that against the Giants. And look, it happens, but unfortunately, when you have the history of the Chargers and you have the history of Justin Herbert recently, those games mean a lot more than, a guy like a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen or a Mahomes, doing that. And so, Chargers, I thought they were going to be I thought after 3 weeks they were going to be pretty hard to catch and run down in that AFC West. I don't know if that's the case anymore. And we're going to stick in AFC West, man. AFC West, man. Whew. But we're going to stick in this with look, we got the Chiefs and Ravens. And so I was wrong on this one, y'all. Now, granted, I thought it was a 50-50 chance, like either team could win this game. I thought the Ravens needed it more, but the Chiefs come out and dominate this game. 37-20. That 20 is even a little bit, doesn't really indicate exactly how much of a gap there was this game. They got a touchdown towards the end there that was just kind of garbage time touchdown. And look, if you're Baltimore, man, it is panic time. It is panic time for Baltimore. I thought if you're the Ravens, you needed this game for multiple reasons. One, the Steelers are actually winning. Now, whether that keeps up or not, we'll see. But Steelers are winning, drops you further in the division. The Bengals are ahead of you right now, which I had the Bengals out of the playoffs. And look, it's more than fair to say that we have a big enough sample size with Lamar that when it comes to big games, when it comes to playoff games, when it comes to facing off against his caliber of competition as far as at the quarterback position, he has got a problem. There was a stat I saw with over the last like 2 years or something like that. Lamar's thrown 3 interceptions over like 50 games or something like that. And so it's got to be more than 2 years. But anyways, it was essentially he has doubled the amount of turnovers he's had against the Bills and Chiefs in 3 games as he has over like the last like 3 years or whatever it is versus everyone else. And so, when you look at it, we've seen him in the playoffs struggle. We see him in these big games struggle. We see him against these top tier competitions or these like rivalry games struggle. And now, again, does that mean I don't think he'll ever make a Super Bowl? No, I think he will eventually make one. But it's almost seeming like he's going to need that almost Denver Peyton Manning kind of path to a Super Bowl where Peyton in that stretch where they won the Super Bowl with Denver did not play well in the playoffs, did not put up good numbers, but the defense was so good that it was able to carry him. I think if you can get, again, you're talking about a historical defense with that Denver team, but maybe a defense not quite as good. And Lamar gives you, I think Lamar, even with his struggles, will give you a little bit more than Peyton gave you in those playoffs. But to me, it's starting to look more like if Lamar is going to do it, it's going to need to be more like that setup than, him being the driving force to bring you to a Super Bowl. And look, on the other side of it, the Chiefs, man, they're back. The last 3 games, everybody got to get their shots in after the Super Bowl, after week 1 and after week 2. And look, they get Xavier Worthy back. And like I said, I think Xavier Worthy is going to open up a lot of the stuff on that offense. And it looks like that proved out to be true. Just giving them that over-the-top threat opens up so much underneath. And then, look, you still waiting on Rashee Rice to come back. That then gives them another guy in that intermediate area that can take a 5, 7, 10-yard pass and turn it into 20 or 30. And so, again, I think with Xavier coming back, Rashee getting back in the mix, and that will then open up that run game some. It opens up more for Travis Kelce, Juju, and their defense. Look, man, say what you want about the Ravens and how bad their defense is, which is why the Chiefs might have threw up 37. The Ravens offense was one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best coming into that game. And the Chiefs defense dominated them. After that first drive, the Chiefs defense was in firm control over the Baltimore offense the rest of the game. And so, look, I think the Chiefs, this win puts them almost pretty much solidifies them back towards the top of that AFC and right back into the contender status. I had never had them out of that status, but a lot of people did, and I think this win puts them right back in it. And next, man, look, we are going to move to one of the most wild games and one of the most just unforeseeable games of the week and wrap it up with the Cowboys and the Packers. And so here's what I'm going to start it with, because, look, I came into this saying I didn't think there was any possible way that Dallas could have won that game. And you know what? I feel like I was half right, because I think that was as good as Dallas could play. And I think that was probably the worst the Packers defense could have played. And we ended in a tie. So, and again, the 40 that the Packers put up, I think the Dallas defense is so bad that you just have to expect that. But what I am going to hone in on right here is because everyone is going to look at this game. Everyone's going to look at this game and say, oh my gosh, Jerry might have been right. Look, that Packers defense with Micah, Dallas went up and hung up 40 on them with no CeeDee Lamb. And while, yes, that is true, but here is why I'm going to tell you that the Packers won this trade, and you can tell by the reaction of everybody. Because when you look at this, Dallas in their tie feels like they won the game, and the Packers in this tie feel like they lost this game and it was a bad loss. What that tells me is you are dealing with one team who knows they're good and was severely disappointed in their outing, and yet another team who knows they're not that good and was ecstatic with their outing, both of which, resulting in a tie. And so to me, that says enough about who won this trade as of right now. Because look, essentially right now, player for player, you traded Micah for Kenny Clark. Micah had as bad as Micah, and I'm not even going to say as bad as he played, because they were running away from him, doubling him everywhere he went. No matter where he's coming from, he had a double, and they always ran the plays away from him. So, again, essentially, when you have a guy like Micah, and this is why I thought the Packers defense was going to be so good, is when you have a guy like Micah getting all that attention and sending things the other way, it makes everyone else on that defensive job that much easier. They just didn't capitalize on it. And then look, Micah with essentially the play of the game for the Packers and getting that big sack on Dak, who looked like if he didn't get that, Dak is running in the end zone for a touchdown in overtime to win the game. Well, most likely win the game. And so to me, that's how I look at how we can evaluate this trade. And if I'm a Dallas fan, one, I'm sorry, because you're a Dallas fan, and that's just unfortunate. But no, if I'm a Dallas fan for real, sorry, y'all know I got to take a shot at you every time I can. But if I'm a Dallas fan, man, this is a game that tells me and shows me why I should be so upset with Jerry Jones and getting rid of Micah. Because you have an offense without its best player who can go in against a top defense and put up 40 points. And this isn't the first time this year they've put up 40 points. But you also have a defense that cannot stop a nosebleed and cannot generate any pressure throughout a game on the quarterback. Almost like if they had a guy like Micah Parsons, we might be looking at this team like, oh my gosh, they might be contenders. But because you have a defense that is going to give up 40, and your only way of winning is in these shootouts, we can't view you as a legitimate team, as a legitimate playoff contender, anything. And so I just think if you're Dallas, you've got to be sick watching this season so far, because the offenses look great. Schottenheimer's offense has looked amazing, and it's just you can't generate a pass rush and you can't get any stops on defense. And the guy you traded away is one of the best in the league at pressuring the quarterback. And when he's been on the field for your team, you've had a good defense. And look, on the other side of this ball, man, look, Jordan Love. Look, I went into why I don't believe the Packers can be true contenders, because I don't believe in Jordan Love, and I think he gives away games. And look, last week against the Browns, he did that, throwing the pick that essentially, was the only real touchdown, because they got the Browns got on the 3. Other than that, defense held up their end of the bargain. So you have that loss on Jordan Love. And then look, this game, he played great, but he had a costly turnover, which was right in the middle of the Dallas run, that when Dallas started kind of getting that offense going. And then I don't know if I've ever seen a longer second or a quicker trigger on the play clock and game clock. But Jordan Love needs to send whoever that clock operator in Dallas is a really nice gift, because he almost cost that team a tie, and that was going to be a loss, because that pass he threw and how just there was no real urgency to get to the line, get a playoff, spike it, anything like that. That should have been a loss. And if that's a loss, we're again looking at a 2-2 Packers team with both losses essentially right at Jordan Love's feet. And so again, this is why for me it's hard to really consider them a true contender in as far as for a Super Bowl right now, and why I need to see more growth from Jordan Love. And look, we want to stick with quarterbacks, man, and we're going to move to Cincinnati, because Cincinnati, look, weird predicament for them, right? Because you have Joe Burrow, who's out. Browning has just given you arguably the worst quarterback play in the league, excluding Russell Wilson and Joe Flacco. And so, look, for me, I think you've got these three wins right now. I think they're 3-1. And in an AFC North where you're watching the Ravens struggle, and again, depending on how you feel about Pittsburgh, I don't think they're a real threat. But you have to look, if you're the Bengals, you have to look and think you are in a very good position. I think this is a chance. This is a time where you go and make a move. Go and get a quarterback. Spend whatever you need to spend, but go get you a quarterback who can at least keep you afloat. Because right now, I think if you're the Bengals, your best scenario with Browning right now is maybe you get another win before Joe Burrow comes back. And so I think they've never been in such a good position to start the year as they are this year. Go out, get a Jameis Winston. Go out and get, a Kirk Cousins. Somebody who can give you competent quarterback play and turn that one win into maybe 3 wins before Joe Burrow gets back. And also gives you a kind of cushion where maybe you don't have to rush Joe Burrow back the very first week he's available. You can give him that extra week, extra 2 weeks to make sure he's fully healthy. And so I think if you're the Bengals, that's just, again, if I'm running the team, that's what I'm doing. Unfortunately for Cincinnati fans, the people who are running the team are the people who are running the team. And so more than likely, you're probably not going to do it because the ownership is cheap and they don't make moves. And so I think it's going to be a big miss when you start the year 3-1 and you're looking at you're 500 when Joe Burrow gets back, and you got to run the table to even make the playoffs. And look, lastly, we're going to talk about one of the more rough stories of the week, man. Tyreek Hill going down with one of the most just gruesome injuries I've ever seen on a football field, man. If you haven't watched it, I don't advise it. Dislocated knee. Reports are multiple ligament tears, ACL torn. Had surgery. Apparently it went well. Right now, it doesn't look like he's going to need another surgery. Look, his agent is out here saying that he's going to be back. The goal is to be back ready for the start of the season next year. I doubt that. Every doctor that I've seen on Twitter, legitimate doctors, legitimate sports doctors, all of them are saying this is at minimum a year injury, like almost no chance he's ready for the start, and more than likely a 2-year injury. And then it just brings into question, man, what he's going to look like coming back, because for the just absolutely, one of a kind athlete that Tyreek is, and I was talking about him to, because my wife was watching a football game when we were talking with my wife about his injury, and just kind of explaining Tyreek as just he's probably he is LeBron James in a 5'10" body, just how he's built, the athleticism, but world-class sprinter speed, Olympian sprinter speed. And it's just when you take a guy who, and this is no shot at Tyreek, it's just he's not the greatest route runner, doesn't have the greatest hands, not a tactician wide receiver, but a guy who beats angles. You never have a real angle on him. When you take a guy like that, and maybe he goes from a 4.2 or whatever he runs to a 4.35 or a 4.4, he's not the same guy. And so now I have my fingers. Look, he's in 31 now. I have my fingers crossed that he comes back as the same guy, because look, he's one of the most exciting players in the NFL when he has the ball in his hands. And look, I would say this with him is just when I look at guys, wide receivers, since I've been watching football, he may be the most dangerous wide receiver outside of maybe Randy Moss in the last 15, 20 years. Because you're talking about a guy who regularly can take a slant that he catches 7 yards and take it to the house. We saw it in, that playoff game against Buffalo, where it's just with the ball in his hands, there might not be a more dangerous player in the NFL ever. Because of his speed, because of his strength, and because of just what he can do on the field. And so, look, if he, like I said, I hope he can come back. If he can't, it's one of the, you can go look up the things he's done after from his second year till now. He's a solidified, probably, I would say he's a solidified Hall of Famer, but it's one of the best stretches by any kind of wide receiver, by any wide receiver that we've seen. And so, if he does come back and he's not the same, it will be kind of rough to watch, because you're talking about a guy who, look, was still one of the best wide receivers in the league, still one of the most dangerous guys in the league with the ball in his hands. So, look, we are hoping for the best for him, though, man. Hope he comes back. I doubt it'll be with the Dolphins. My guess is he probably gets cut this offseason just because there's not a huge hit on their cap. And there was already some kind of, stuff swirling around about him. But, also did this stuff about talking about, look at how happy he is. He doesn't have to be with 2 anymore. Y'all, I don't care how bad your situation is. You are never happy you're hurt. As an athlete, you are never happy, especially in the way he was hurt. So all that's weird energy, man. Like, y'all got to cut that. That's like just the worst people putting that out in social media that's filled with bad people. They're like the worst people of sports people. But look, man, we're gonna move ahead, man. Look ahead to week 5. Some of the top games, and then I'll give you the game like we always do, the watch of the week that I think is a little bit underrated. And so we're going to start off, man, Rams 49ers. This is tomorrow night. Biggest thing here is, can the Rams keep this rolling? I think they do. I think that, again, going back to the Rams, man, just that punch of Puka with Devontae, with how Matt Stafford's playing, and then that defense is going to be able to really get after it. Juwan Jennings, I think, has already been ruled out. Purdy is a big question mark right now, whether he's going to be ruled out. And so I think that Rams defense is going to dominate this game, and I think that the Rams offense is going to have a really good game as well and keep that rolling. And look, from the other side, man, the 49ers, look, they've got a good record right now. 3-1, I believe. Yeah, 3-1. And look, they have the easiest schedule coming into the year. But you're going to get to a point where these injuries, you're playing good teams or even mediocre teams, and these injuries are going to give you losses. And so I truly believe right now this 49er team is going to find themselves in jeopardy of getting into the playoffs, even with this weak schedule. Look, Purdy came back, did not look good. He had, 5 turnovers last week. And so, I mean, I think right now, if he's not 100%, probably having him sit and letting Mac Jones go out there and at least give you some safe quarterback play is probably the move. With, y'all know me, I trust Kyle Shanahan. I think he can make any average quarterback look really good, a la Purdy. But let him go out there with Mac, call a safe game. Maybe you can beat some of these easier teams and you're not finding yourself in such a hole. But look, I mean, right now you got the Rams who are 3-1. You got the Seahawks who are 3-1, and both those teams look like legitimate contenders. Maybe you get 3 teams from that NFC West, but if I had to guess one right now, it's the Niners are the odd man out. Next up, man, we got the Broncos and the Eagles. Biggest thing for me is this game, again, going back to kind of just what we talked about earlier with the AJ thing, right? Him probably requesting a trade here soon. I think what every Eagles fan is going to want to see this game, because just there's been such a focus on the lack of passing, is they're going to want to see us go out and start slinging the ball around. And I think it'd be the worst mistake against this defense, because this defense is good. And I think if you get into a point, if you're the OC, where you're trying to make AJ happy and you're trying to, show you can throw the ball, this is a team that can capitalize on that. And while I don't trust Bo Nix, and Sean Payton's offense with Bo Nix running it this year has not looked great, it's a game that the Eagles can lose. Now, I'm picking the Eagles because I don't think, just based on how their OC and how Sirianni's been talking, I don't think they're going to do that, which I think, again, is going to lead to frustration around AJ and questions around AJ. But again, I think the biggest thing I think the worst thing they could do is go out and try to go pass heavy this game. Now, I'm not saying I think they should go out in the first couple plays, get AJ a touch or two, some scripted stuff right to him. Same thing coming out of the second half, give him some stuff, some AJ plays. But Hurts thrown over 30 times this game. This isn't the game to do it. Next, man, we got the Texans and Ravens. And so, look, the Texans, man, this is, I think it's tough because both these teams really, really need a win. I think when you look at it, the Texans are probably in better position if they get a loss, but their problem right now is, man, that offense is looking rough. And so, look, I know they had a really good showing in the fourth quarter against the Titans, who are the Titans, but biggest thing for them is, man, you got to get that offense rolling. You got to get CJ rolling. He just has not looked the same since his rookie year, really. And another team that came in last year and this year with pretty high expectations. And look, they have a Super Bowl contending defense, but that offense has just been so bad. And for the flip, man, you got the Ravens side of it. Again, a team that really needs a win right now. And looks like you're going to be without Lamar Jackson with a hamstring, which means you got Cooper Rush. And I think with Cooper Rush, that offense is in trouble. Um, look, they said 2 to 3 weeks probably for Lamar. You put 2 to 3 weeks, you get the Texans with a great defense and an offense that got a little bit of something going. Who's going to get to come into Baltimore and play that against that last place defense or almost last place defense. But then you got the Rams next week, and then you got the Bears. And so if you don't have Lamar for those 3 games, you're lucky if you win one. Maybe you get the Bears, I would say, but I think without Lamar, that might be an 0-3 stretch where you're looking at a 1-6 start, which I think that pretty much ices you out of winning the division at least. And playoffs become, you're going to have to string together some big winning streaks to end the year. And so, um, again, I think the Ravens, if they have any chance of winning this week at least, it is Derrick Henry heavy, where the Texans defense, where they can be exposed, is against the run. And granted, Derrick Henry, he's had a couple fumbling issues. Fumbling isn't something you typically see, is where it's like, oh, he's 32, he all of a sudden fumbles a lot more. Just kind of like, Derrick Henry's not known to fumble. I would doubt that stays up. He's still averaging over 5 yards a carry. We'll see what that looks like with a loaded box, and you don't have the threat of Lamar running. But I think you got to lean heavy into Derrick Henry this game. And, just hope he can break off a couple of them and hope your defense can hold up. And that Texans fourth quarter against the Titans was an aberration. I don't think that'll be the case. And so with that, I got the Texans winning this one. And then lastly, man, we got the Jags and the Chiefs. And so I think biggest thing here coming in are the Chiefs officially back? And so look, Mahomes 6-0 against the Jags. But this Jags team, man, is serious. That defense is, I think they forced 13 turnovers already, which is already more than they had all of last year. And so this game, I think, is really going to come down to that turnover battle. And so, Mahomes, I think they showed the stat today. Mahomes is 36-2 when the Chiefs win or tie the turnover battle. And Mahomes hasn't really turned the ball over. His only pick this year is that one that bounced off Travis Kelce's hands. So I would assume they do not lose this turnover battle. I also think that, again, I think we see that offense continue to hum. I'm not sure we see another 37, but I could see a 28, 30-point game coming from the Chiefs, 27, 30 points, and the offense looking really good. I do want to see them start getting that run game going. And then as far as the defense, man, I think that defense is going to have give Trevor Lawrence and that offense problems. Trevor Lawrence has not looked great this year. If you haven't watched the Jags are very much led by their defense this year and generating those turnovers. And so I think you see the Chiefs roll this one. I don't think it's, again, by roll, I mean, I think they win. I think you see the offense continue. I think you see the defense continue to look good. And yeah, I think, Mahomes moves to 7-0 in his career against the Jags. And lastly, man, we got our underrated watch of the week. And so this week, man, I'm going with a game where I think, again, going to be a lot of offense. Not necessarily good teams, but if you just want something fun to watch, I'm going with the Cowboys and the Jets. And so I think, man, one, the Cowboys offense is just, they showed against the Packers, like they can put up numbers, and they can march down the field. And Dak is having a great year. Pickens gives them a legitimate receiving threat, even with CD out. And the Cowboys defense is so bad that I think the Jets can put up a lot of points too, just because the Cowboys defense is that bad. So I think you're going to see a lot of scoring in that game. You probably see the Cowboys put up another high 30, 40-point game. I think you probably see the Jets put up around 30, low to mid 30s. I would say the Cowboys win it, but I think if you're just looking for a game that with a lot of offense is going to be fun to watch, I would say the Cowboys and Jets are going to be the game for you. And so, look, man, that wraps up for episode 5 here, man. Look, as always, I appreciate y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications when I post again. As always, I appreciate y'all. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok. We're always posting content, so engage with that, like that, share that, and we're going to see y'all next time.